Hey, what's up everybody? Kyrios TCG here, and today this will be the first episode of doing a deck profile, or at least an explanation on a particular deck that I recently started to make, and they are the Almajestars. So, Almajestars are used by a card fight player known as Sophie Bell in the anime, who fights against Rika, who uses Youthberg. She likes to use what she says to Rika to get him off his game, to rile him up, and it eventually works. But recently, in the recent episode, she does kind of unfurls her true colors, as she says that she possesses many masks to hide herself. So I'm gonna try to explain the base, like the ride deck and possible support for the deck. So I will try my very best with this, and in the future I will have more knowledge on future decks if I make any more. But if you guys like this, please comment and subscribe so I can do more of this. This is really fun for me and I want to do more of this. Also, my Springfest 2023 mat. Thanks to my friends in the Vanguard NYC Vanguard community for allowing me to get one of these. So without further ado, let's get started. So for Almajestar, for the ride deck, we're starting off with the grade 0. So it starts off like most. So the Almajestar line, or the deck itself, all come from dark states. So it's right up there with Chronojet and like Bruce. So basically this one has the effect of when this card when this unit is rode upon, if you went second, draw a card. So for Almajestar, sometimes going second could be good depending on what your hand is, but mostly you probably want to go first because the whole deck is, you want to make sure that you have triggers, especially crits. You want critical triggers in your drop zone. Why is that? We're going to get to that in a minute as we go along. So let's say it's your next turn. You ride to grade 1 to Almajestar Schwartz Sparta. So it says here, when this unit is rolled upon by Almajestar Tehran Dyna, soul charge 2, and if a critical trigger was soul charged due to its effect, you draw a card, and once per turn, when it's in rear guard, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, bind a trigger unit from the soul, and if you do, this unit gets 10k power until the end of the turn. So that's actually pretty good. So it goes from 8,000 power to 18. That's pretty good. And eventually, once you have Unica on board, basically Dyna and Sparta get to go into your rear guard zones, and it really does really well. So next up, we have the Almajestar Tehran Dyna. So this says, when this unit is rolled upon by a unit with Astrea in its name, in its card name, choose an Almajestar Schwartz Sparta from your soul and call that card and this card to the rear. So basically, when Unica is on board, you basically get to call them both on rear. You could do like this, like so. Let me try to center them. You can do this like so, and it actually does pretty well. And since Sparta's in the back, if you are facing, let's say you have Unica on board, if your opponent already has like a grade 3 already, or so, you bind a trigger from the soul. It could be a crit, and basically it gets 10k power. Once Unica is out, you want to have crits on the bind, because we're going to get to that right now. So, ride, grade 3, Almajestar, Almajestar Astraea Unica. So it says when the trigger unit is Soul Blast. Okay, when you Soul Blast for the cost of this unit's ability, choose one of your units and it gets 5,000 power until end of turn. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, use Soul Blast 3, bind all critical triggers for this cost, and perform all the following according to the number of critical triggers in your bind zone. One or more, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. Two or more, this unit gets critical +1 until the end of that battle. Three or more cards, this unit gets drive +1. So drive +1 is when you do a drive check, you get an additional check. This is essentially good if you want to turn the tables. Let's say you're on the losing end. It's good to turn the tables. If you're on the losing end, it is really good. So that's the ride line. So I'm going to be talking about some cards that are for support. Oh, also, I almost forgot. We can't just leave out the new version of Unica. We have the Zeno Almajestar Astraea Biko Masque. This card can only be ridden from a grade 3 with Astraea in its card name. Once per turn, remove a card with Astraea in its different card name from this unit from your hand, soul, or drop. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, retire it, and this unit gets drive +1 until the end of the turn. So this basically gets the similar effects to its original counterpart, though this doesn't need this for that particular effect. It doesn't need cards to be binded, or your triggers. It doesn't need triggers to be binded in order for it to work. It's like an automatic effect. And when this unit attacks, Counter Blast and Soul Blast 3 bind all critical triggers for this cost. Choose one of your rear guards, restand it, and that unit and this unit. That unit and this unit get 5,000 power until the end of the turn for every 2 triggers in your bind zone. So this is actually really good. This is really good because since the regular Unica basically gets the effect of critical +1, pop a rear guard, and a drive +1, this basically gets all of literally that, but in addition to that, it gives a rear guard the ability to restand and get more power. This is good if you want to do additional attacks, so it's always good to have a little extra power and a bit more damage. For this deck, you want to use every bit of resource that your deck has to offer. Especially crits, you're going to want to use all of that. If you have, let's say your hand is literally filled with, let's say by some unforeseen circumstance that your hand is filled with crits. That's actually not bad because you want the crits to be in the drop zone. You want them to be there because you have cards in your deck that basically allow you to get them from the drop zone to add it to soul. By that time, you should have Unica on board, and because of Unica, you get to retire a rear guard. For 1, you get to retire a rear guard. 2 or more, you get drive, you get crit +1, and if it's 3 or more, you get drive +1. Then when Unica Masque comes out, basically it gives power to it allows you to restand a rear guard if you've already swung with the rear guard, and it allows it to do not only that, Biko basically gives your rear guard additional power. So it's good to have that strategy in mind. Now, personal note, do I think this deck is powerful in its own little way? Sure. Do I think it's better than Chronojet or Bruce? Better than Chrono? Definitely not. Better than Bruce? That's up for debate. So I'm going to be talking about I'm going to be talking about cards in the deck that will really help out. So the first one I'm going to be talking about, especially if you are using a Masque, Biko Masque, Dragon Tree Wretch Skullchemda is excellent due to its effect when it is placed on rear. You counterblast and soul blast one. You choose any of your rears that don't have a Dragon Tree marker. So basically one of these. You put it on, let's say if you already have units on it, if the rear guard does not have a Dragon Tree marker, you can place it on that circle, and if you do, whatever monster is on this marker gets 5,000 power. So that's good. And on top of that, you get to search your deck for up to one Masque of Hydrogrum, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So this card not only lets you bring out a Dragon Tree marker, but it also lets you get a Masque of Hydrogrum, which Masque of Hydrum lets you call out your Masque version and considers it as a Persona Ride. So that is also really good. So another card. Now, I know most people don't really use it all too much. We have Kit's Peak. Kit's Peak Griffin basically says, when this unit is placed on rear, if you have a Vanguard with Almajestar in its card name, choose 2 trigger units from your drop and put them into your soul. Now, remember before I did say that you want to have, especially your crits, you want them to be in your drop. Since you're playing Kit's Peak Griffin, it basically allows you to call 2 crits and put them into soul. By the time you have Unica, you should have at least 3. You should have 3, at max 4. If you are playing, I'm going to assume, play at least 4 of these. If you're playing 4 of these, the max you should have for this deck to work, you're playing 8 crits. You want that to work. So this card lets you get 2, and also if your bind zone has a critical trigger, this unit gets 5,000 power and 5,000 shield, active on opponent's turn. So when it intercepts, it gets, so that's literally 10k shield. That's a 10k shield, and that's really good for early and mid and match. So there's a couple more that I'm going to be talking about. For perfect guards, I kind of use Psychic Prima Miranda, though a couple friends of mine tell me that there are other perfect guards that work just as well. So this is what I'm using at present. I'm using 4 perfect guards. You have to play 4 of each. So that's literally it. I'm only using this temporarily, so eventually when I revamp the deck, it'll be a different perfect guard. For those of, basically when you see that little gold part, the 0, it's a perfect guard. So in Overdress, when you use this, you have to discard a card from your hand to the drop. This is also very good because when you use perfect guards, if you have, let's say if you have crits in your hand, you can discard a critical trigger to the drop zone, and when that happens, by the time, let's say this is early match, by the time you have Almajestar Unica, by the time you have Unica on board, and you'll have a bunch of other cards that will allow you, like Kit's Peak, basically allows you to, when this card is put on rear, basically you put the top 2, you put 2 triggers into your soul, from the drop to soul. And by the time you get to Unica, this is going to be great because you can activate her effect when she swings, when she attacks. That is also going to be pretty good. Also, for recycle purposes, you have, for recycling from bind to soul to reuse Unica's effect again, base Unica, we have Give Force Setos. So it says if you have a Vanguard with Almajestar in its card name, retire this unit. Choose up to 2 critical triggers from your bind zone and put them into your soul. This is really good because if you already have, let's say you have, let's just picture you have 3 crits in your bind. This basically lets you take 2 and put them back into soul. So when on your next turn, when Almajestar swings, you can take out the 2 again, and it basically resets the effects again. So you get all 3 abilities recycling again. So it's always good to have, like I said before, it is always good to use your resources. You want the crits to be in your drop as, I wouldn't say as quickly as possible, but you want them to be in your drop before you get to Unica. Because once you get to Unica, it's going to get a little harder because you want to be on the offensive. Again, I do not see this deck as like super aggro, but I mean, it's not super aggro. Also, you have Aram Copernicus. When this unit boosts, if you have a Vanguard with Almajestar in its card name, choose up to 1 trigger unit from your hand or drop and put it into soul. If you put a trigger unit from your hand, draw a card. So if you do it from soul, if you do it from drop, you don't get a card. You don't get a card draw. But if you do it from hand, it compensates you with an extra card draw, which could be a possible trigger or a possible critical trigger. That's also good. Remember, you're going to hear me say this. It's going to sound like a broken record. Make sure your resources are being used for Almajestar. Because once you do, you'll have enough to not only retire when you get to Unica, not only for Unica and for Biko, you want to be able to retire your opponent's rear guards, especially rear guards that have additional abilities that can be a pain to deal with. So it's always good to make sure that your opponent's resources are exhausted. Meanwhile, your resources are going to be plentiful. And I have a few more here. This was another one that I was considering. Well, a friend of mine said that this is good. Black Sky Thunder Quaking Queen Lamina. When this card is discarded from hand during your ride phase, wait, hold on. Oh, Counterblast 1 and put this card on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. When it's auto, when this unit is placed on rear from the hand, if you Persona Road this turn, Counterblast 1, choose a card from your soul and call it to the rear. If you called a card, you may soul charge 1. So this is also pretty good because if it is discarded from your hand during the ride, you get to Soul Blast 1 and put this card to the bottom of the deck, which is okay, and you get to draw a card, which could be a trigger, which is also good. And when this unit is placed on rear from the hand, if you Persona Road this turn, you can Counterblast 1, choose a card from the soul. So that means you can go back to Sparta, and Sparta basically lets you you can do either Sparta, you can do Copernicus, or I mean you could do either one of those two. Copernicus, I would say, is also pretty good. Copernicus for this effect, it's good also if it is in your soul. If it is in your soul, then that's fine. But if it is not, but mostly, I guess for now, Sparta would be great for that effect, because since it's secondary effect, if your opponent is grade 3 or higher, you get to basically put the next 2 triggers. You take 2 triggers, you get to bind a trigger from the soul, and it gets 10k power. And then you can boost it behind. By this time, you should have Biko. You should have Biko on board and do additional damage. Or if you are not playing the Masque deck, you can play base Unica. You can play base Unica if you were to so choose. And there's one last card. There's one last card. Well, there's like 2 more cards I want to talk about before I end the video. We have Friends of the Netherworld Ling. Okay, it's Friend of the Netherworld Ling, and I felt like there was another card that I was going to be talking about. Oh, also for the Overtrigger, I use Hades Dragon Deity of Resentment for this deck. It's especially good. So for Friend of the Netherworld Ling basically says, when this unit is placed on rear, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them and put it into your soul, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck. So before, when I said that, like Copernicus, like let's say you draw Copernicus. Let's say for this effect you draw Copernicus, and Copernicus is in the soul. Then, let's say if you were using Lamia, the grade 2, since its effect basically says if you Persona Road, let's say that Copernicus is still in your soul by the time you get to Unica, or Unica or Masque, or Biko Masque, or Unica Masque. Same thing, but I prefer to say Unica Masque over Biko. So by that time, call Lumina. If she is called during the turn that you Persona Road, basically you get to take a card from the soul and add it to rear. So you can go Copernicus, you could do Copernicus, or if let's say you can go Sparta again if you were to so choose, that's up to you. Remember, this deck is, I would say, not so much super situational, but you want to make sure that, again, for the final time, make sure all your resources are used in this deck, because you want to make sure that your opponent is completely overwhelmed by your mix-up potential and potential damage. Unica's no Bruce and no Chronojet, but in a pinch, Unica can actually do bits of damage every time. Anything that you can use as your resources is a good one. So, with that being said, also, I almost forgot, for the crits, I already have 6. Like, you're supposed to get, like, 4 of Lively Breath Dragon, 4 of that for Breath Dragon, and for 4 Lively Breath Dragon, and 4 Connected Rampage Clan, and then for heal, you're going to need at least 4. I would assume to use Direful Doll Charmaine for this. If you want to do 4 of that, that's fine. And I don't know, I was told that using front triggers or draw triggers was not good for this. So I'm using front triggers, since if I Persona Ride, I get 10k power for the front row. And since I'm playing right now, it's 3 front triggers. When the deck is updated, it'll have 4 front triggers and everything else. So that's all I got for today. I was a bit nervous doing this, but I'm glad I was able to do this video. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully in the next video, I will try to do other decks that I see from, my friends that play the game, and hopefully I can get a couple of them to to join in and speak their piece, will give their input on specific decks and what's good in the meta. Hopefully we can get that going. So with that being said, I will see you all next time. Oh, also, it is almost about to be 4th. Also, have a good day, have a good night, and happy 4th of July, because 4th of July is by the uploading of this video, it should be 4th of July. So with that being said, see you guys later, and be safe out there for 4th of July, please. Bye.